Cold wind slices across the courthouse plaza as a crowd tightens into a restless circle around a small wheelchair at the base of the stone steps. Phones rise like silent witnesses. Live streams already running. In the center stands Officer Daniel Brooks, one hand firm on the leash of a German shepherd named Valor. Valor sits perfectly at heel, ears forward, eyes sharp, body unmoving despite the shouting. Two uniformed security guards block the ramp, repeating the same word, restricted. The girl in the wheelchair, no older than 8, clutches a folded paper to her chest, silent, frozen, unable to reach the stage labeled Community Heroes Day. The murmurs grow louder. Rules versus rights. Rain begins to fall in thin, cold lines. Brooks gives a low command. Sit. Stay. Valor obeys without hesitation. A siren wails somewhere in the distance, drawing closer. One guard steps forward and grips the wheelchair handle. Valor's posture shifts by inches, not aggression. Precision. The entire crowd inhales at once. If loyalty still matters to you, tell us below and stand with brave canine stories before the truth steps forward. The scene opens with controlled stillness rather than chaos. Officer Daniel Brooks does not rush forward. He watches. His training has taught him that the first mistake in a public confrontation is movement without understanding. Rain taps lightly against the stone steps of the courthouse, each drop adding a thin sheen to the pavement. The wheelchair sits just below the ramp line, angled slightly as if it had been turned away mid-approach. The girl's hands rest on the metal rims, fingers trembling in tiny pulses. She probably does not notice herself. Her shoes are already darkened by water. She has not spoken once since Brooks arrived. Not a complaint, not a plea. Only silence that feels heavier than shouting. Valor remains perfectly aligned at Brooks's left leg. Heel. The command had been given seconds earlier, and the dog holds it with professional precision. Ears forward, eyes alert. Tail still. Valor is not scanning the crowd randomly. He is tracking hands, posture, and distance. Brooks notices this and shifts his gaze to match the dog's line of sight. Two uniformed security guards stand shoulder-wide across the ramp entrance. Their stance is defensive, not violent, but their tone is sharp enough to slice through the rain. Restricted. Policy. Move aside. The same words repeat like a loop. Brooks registers the folded paper against the girl's chest. It is not crumpled. It is protected. That detail matters. People guard what proves they belong. He also notices the crowd forming faster than security realizes. Phones rise. Screens glow. Public pressure begins as a whisper and grows into a current. Someone mutters about access rights. Another argues about event rules. Brooks hears everything but reacts to nothing yet. Sit. Valor lowers instantly without breaking eye contact with the guards. The dog's discipline becomes a silent anchor in a scene drifting toward disorder. The girl's silence is not passive. Brooks recognizes the difference between fear and shock. Fear looks around for exits. Shock looks inward. She is staring straight ahead, breathing shallowly, shoulders tight. Rainwater runs down the spokes of her wheels and pools near the curb. No one offers an umbrella. No one steps forward. The moral tension tightens in Brooks's chest. He knows the difference between private security and sworn authority, and he also knows that stepping in without cause can turn sympathy into accusation. He is off duty. He does not have event jurisdiction. But justice does not wait for paperwork. Watch. The quiet command slips from Brooks's lips, barely louder than breath. Valor's gaze sharpens further, locking on to the nearest guard's hands. The guard shifts weight, impatient, glancing at the growing crowd. The other guard checks a wrist radio and shakes his head. The folded paper catches a droplet of rain, and a faint emblem flashes for half a second before the girl tightens her grip again. Brooks stores the image in memory. Evidence often hides in small reflections. The crowd inches closer. The air changes from curiosity to pressure. Security voices rise to maintain control. Brooks feels the moment tipping. He does not move yet. He waits for the line that separates disagreement from wrongdoing. It comes quietly. One guard reaches forward and grips the wheelchair handle with unnecessary firmness, trying to pivot it away from the ramp. Valor's posture shifts by a fraction. Not a growl, not a bark. A controlled, alert stance learned through years of patrol work. Muscles engage. Head lifts. Focus narrows. Brooks places a calm hand near the leash without pulling it. Easy. The word is not for the dog alone. It is for the entire moment. The guard pauses, sensing eyes on him. Rain continues to fall. Phones continue to record. The first warning has sounded without a single raised voice. The tension does not explode. It thickens. The kind of tension that spreads quietly through a crowd until everyone feels it but no one claims responsibility for it. The circle around the ramp grows wider and louder at the same time. Phones are no longer just raised. They are angled for better framing, for better outrage, for better views. Screens glow with scrolling comments. Some supportive, some cruel. Most careless. A man near the back shrugs and says, "Rules are rules," loud enough for those around him to nod in agreement. Another voice counters, softer, "She's just a kid." The divide becomes visible in posture more than words. Half the crowd leans forward. Half leans back. Indifference has a physical shape. It looks like crossed arms and lowered eyes. Sympathy looks like hands hovering uselessly at chest level, unsure whether to help or stay out of it. The nearest guard shifts his stance again, planting his boots directly across the ramp as if drawing a line no one is allowed to see, but everyone must obey. His partner laughs under his breath and mutters something about special treatment, the phrase slipping into the air like a stain. It is not shouted. It is worse than that. It is casual, the kind of mockery that pretends to be humor while sharpening humiliation. Officer Brooks feels the crowd's energy tilt, not toward violence, toward spectacle. He knows that once a situation becomes entertainment, dignity is the first casualty. He keeps his shoulders relaxed, his voice silent, his attention moving in small controlled arcs. He is not just watching the guards anymore. He is watching the watchers. Valor remains seated at heel, posture unchanged, breath steady. Sit has become more than a command. It has become a message. The dog's stillness contrasts the restless shuffling of shoes and umbrellas around them. The girl in the wheelchair does not look at the crowd. She does not look at the guards. Her eyes remain fixed on Valor. There is no fear in that gaze, only recognition. Brooks notices how her breathing slows each time the dog blinks or shifts an ear. In a sea of noise, the German Shepherd has become her single point of calm. Rainwater slides down her sleeves and drips from her fingertips, but she does not move to wipe it away. Silence continues to wrap around her like armor. A live-stream phone passes close enough for Brooks to catch fragments of scrolling text. Letter through, policy matters, fake sympathy. This is going viral. Words flicker and vanish before they can settle, but their impact lingers. Public opinion is forming in real time, and it is messy, inconsistent, and loud. The folded paper against the girl's chest loosens slightly as her fingers adjust their grip. A corner lifts. For half a second, an official city seal becomes visible beneath the rain. Gold ink against white stock. Brooks registers it instantly. Invitations carry seals. Access passes carry seals. Authority hides in small printed circles more often than in uniforms. The paper lowers again, pressed tight to her chest as if she senses it matters, even if she cannot say why. One guard glances at Brooks and smirks. "Off duty," he says, dismissing him with a flick of the wrist, reducing years of training to a single, irrelevant word. The crowd hears it. Some nod. Others frown. Brooks does not respond. Authority does not always speak. Sometimes it waits. Valor's ears twitch once at the guard's tone, but the dog remains immovable, eyes tracking only hands and distance, never emotion. The air shifts again. A deep rumble rolls across the sky. Thunder cracks overhead, sharp and sudden, causing several phones to dip before rising again. The rain intensifies, falling harder, colder, blurring reflections across the pavement. From the loudspeakers near the stage, a voice cuts through the weather. Final entry for the ceremony. The words land heavier than the thunder. Time has just been weaponized. The announcement of final entry does what raised voices could not. It forces a decision. Officer Daniel Brooks feels the shift in the air the way experienced officers do, not as emotion, but as timing. Moments have windows. When they close, explanations no longer matter. The rain has turned steady now, tapping against jackets and umbrellas, creating a soft, constant noise that hides quieter movements. Brooks steps forward, not aggressively, not challengingly, just enough to reduce the distance between himself, the wheelchair, and the guards by a single pace. One step can change the geometry of a scene. "I can help," he says calmly, voice even, not loud enough to challenge authority but clear enough to be heard. The nearest guard responds immediately, rehearsed, almost relieved to repeat the phrase again. "Guest list only." The words fall like a stamp instead of an explanation. Brooks nods once, not agreeing, only acknowledging that the line has been drawn officially now. He does not argue. Arguments feed crowds. Evidence ends them. Down. The command is quiet but firm. Valor lowers instantly, chest touching the wet pavement, legs tucked neatly beneath his body. The dog's obedience is seamless, almost mechanical, but his eyes never leave the guard's hands. His ears remain forward. His breathing remains steady. Brooks knows this position does two things at once. It reduces perceived threat while increasing readiness. A dog lying down appears passive to the untrained eye. To those who understand canine discipline, it is coiled control. The guards shift uncomfortably, glancing at the growing circle of phones. The second guard mutters again about procedures, about schedules, about not having time for exceptions. The crowd presses closer but stops short of interference. Social pressure builds without physical movement. Brooks lets the silence stretch. Silence makes people fill it with information. His hand moves casually toward his jacket, as if adjusting the collar against the rain. In the same motion, his phone activates. The screen brightness is dimmed. The lens angled downward. He does not raise it. He does not aim it. He simply lets it exist in recording mode, catching reflections in puddles, badge numbers mirrored on wet stone, the stitched names above uniform pockets. Evidence does not always need a direct line of sight. Reflections tell stories too. The motion is invisible to anyone not trained to look for it. The girl remains motionless, but Brooks notices her fingers tightening around the folded paper again. Her knuckles pale. A drop of rain slides along the edge and rolls across the printed surface. This time, the paper tilts farther. The emblem becomes clearer. Gold ring, blue center. Official city seal. Brooks feels the small confirmation settle into place inside his mind like a puzzle piece snapping into alignment. The ramp chain rattles slightly as one guard adjusts its position, narrowing the entrance by a few inches. It is a subtle act, but its message is loud. Time is closing. The ceremony announcer's voice echoes again in the distance, calling names, welcoming dignitaries. The sound grows closer to completion. Brooks senses the approaching end, not as panic, but as a narrowing corridor. He takes another half step, enough to see the paper fully now. The words are printed in bold beneath the seal, dark ink against rain-speckled white. Youth recognition. The phrase is unmistakable. Not a request, not a generic invitation. A designation. His jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. The situation has shifted from inconvenience to denial of rightful access. Valor remains perfectly still in the down position, eyes sharp, muscles relaxed but ready. The crowd murmurs again, sensing something unseen but significant. Brooks lifts his gaze from the paper to the guards, then back to the girl, then to the ramp. The pieces are no longer scattered. They are aligned. The first escalation has begun, and now he has more than sympathy. He has proof. The arrival of a supervisor changes the sound of the scene before it changes anything else. The crowd's murmurs lower instinctively, not out of respect but out of expectation. Authority has a rhythm, and people learn it early. The man moves through the ring of phones with clipped steps, jacket zipped high against the rain, a laminated badge swinging at chest level. He does not look at the girl first. He looks at the guards, then at the ramp, then at the crowd. Assessment before empathy. Procedure before person. Policy, he says before anyone asks a question. The word lands like a shield raised before a strike. His tone is smooth, practiced, meant to close discussions rather than open them. He gestures slightly toward the side walkway, suggesting redirection without using the word itself. We'll guide you around. The phrasing is polite, the meaning is removal. Officer Brooks watches the supervisor's eyes, not his hands. Eyes reveal priority. The supervisor's gaze flicks briefly toward the main entrance doors behind him, then to the clock display above the plaza banner, then back to the wheelchair. Timing again. Always timing. Brooks feels the pattern forming but keeps his posture neutral. Valor remains in down, unmoving, rain gathering along the ridge of his back like a dark stripe. The girl's fingers loosen around the folded paper for the first time. It is not surrender. It is exhaustion. The paper tilts forward, sliding halfway from her grasp before she catches it against her chest again. Her breathing quickens, shoulders rising and falling in shallow waves. She still does not speak. The crowd notices the shift and leans closer, sympathy rising like a brief tide before hesitation pulls it back again. Phones zoom in, screens glow brighter. The supervisor steps closer, hand extending toward the wheelchair handle with rehearsed gentleness, not force. Guidance. The kind that assumes compliance. Valor's posture changes by inches. He does not stand. He does not bark. He shifts forward just enough that his body forms a quiet barrier between the supervisor and the backward path of the wheelchair. No contact, no aggression. Only presence placed with mathematical precision. The leash remains slack. Brooks has not given a command. Necessity has drawn the line instead. The supervisor pauses, registering the dog's position, then glances at Brooks with a thin smile that never reaches his eyes. "We're handling it," he says, voice low but edged with irritation. Brooks nods once, offering neither agreement nor resistance. Neutrality can be a mirror. It reflects pressure back onto the one applying it. A phone vibrates sharply in the supervisor's jacket pocket. He steps half a pace away to answer, turning his shoulder to the crowd, but not far enough to escape the microphones hovering around him. His voice drops, but the words still carry between raindrops. "Yes, arriving soon, understood." A pause. "We're clearing the entrance now." The phrase is casual, almost invisible, but Brooks hears it with clarity. Clearing the entrance. Not assisting, not accommodating. Clearing. The supervisor ends the call and straightens his jacket, confidence returning like a mask being put back on. He gestures again toward the side path, this time more firmly. The guards shift in unison, ready to move the wheelchair away from the ramp. Valor inches forward, another fraction, maintaining the same silent block. The girl's paper trembles again, the gold seal flashing under the gray sky. Brooks lifts his gaze toward the main doors and then back to the supervisor. The pattern locks into place. This is not confusion. This is scheduling disguised as policy. The exclusion is not accidental. It is timed. The rain continues to fall, steady and cold, as the realization settles. The second escalation is no longer about rules. It is about intention. The moment does not arrive with drama. It arrives with gravity. The folded paper slips because the girl's fingers finally lose strength, not because she intends to reveal anything. It slides forward, catches briefly on the edge of her sleeve, then drops to the wet stone with a soft, almost invisible sound beneath the rain. For half a second, no one moves. Then the wind lifts one corner just enough to expose the full print beneath the water droplets. Gold seal. City crest. Bold lettering. Not decorative. Official. Officer Brooks steps forward instinctively, but he stops short, letting the document remain where it fell. Evidence is stronger when untouched. The nearest guard bends slightly, perhaps to pick it up, then hesitates as several phones tilt downward at once, recording the text now visible to anyone willing to read. The crowd's energy changes shape. The earlier murmurs of argument soften into focused silence. Words are being replaced by comprehension. Across the page, in clear dark type, The title stands unmistakably. Youth Recognition. Keynote Honoree. Beneath it, the girl's full name printed with formal spacing and the city emblem repeated at the bottom. This is not a general invitation. It is designation, placement, priority. The rain streaks the ink but cannot erase it. The supervisor's expression tightens for a fraction of a second before smoothing back into practiced neutrality. He steps forward, voice measured, palms open. "There's been a documentation error," he says, tone polished enough to sound reasonable, almost helpful. The phrase floats into the crowd like a lifeline offered to himself rather than to the girl. One guard nods quickly, grateful for the explanation. The other repeats it louder, as if volume could transform doubt into certainty. Documentation error. But the words do not land the way they did earlier. The crowd no longer leans back. Several people lean forward instead, screens zooming in on the lettering, lips moving as they read silently. A woman near the front whispers, "That's her." Another voice says, "You're blocking the honoree." The emotional current shifts from curiosity to disbelief, not anger yet. Recognition first. Anger often follows recognition when dignity has been denied. Brooks lowers his gaze to Valor. The dog remains exactly where he is, rein collecting along his shoulders, eyes forward, muscles relaxed but alert. "Stay." The quiet command settles between them like an invisible line. Valor does not move, does not flick his tail, does not break posture despite the rising volume around him. His stillness becomes a statement more powerful than any raised voice. In a scene filled with movement, the unmoving figure draws the eye. The girl's hands hover uncertainly above the fallen paper, not reaching for it yet, as if she fears touching it will make it disappear. Her silence continues, but her eyes flick once toward Valor and then toward the document. The connection between them remains unspoken, yet unmistakable. Brooks notices her breathing slow again, a fragile equilibrium returning for a brief moment amid the noise. From the loudspeakers near the stage, a crisp voice cuts through the rain once more. Final minute before opening remarks. The words echo across the plaza, carrying urgency with them. The supervisor glances toward the entrance doors again, then at the paper, then at the crowd. Timing presses down like weight. The antagonist's confidence does not vanish. It hardens. They stand straighter, repeating the explanation, clinging to procedure as if it were armor. But the truth now lies in plain sight, on wet stone, illuminated by dozens of screens. The midpoint has arrived quietly yet irreversibly. The paper has spoken without a voice, and the countdown has begun. The shift from debate to action happens without announcement. One of the guards steps behind the wheelchair, with the practiced confidence of someone who believes the decision has already been made elsewhere. His hand closes around the handles, not roughly, but with finality. The supervisor nods once, a small gesture that carries the weight of instruction. The plan is no longer discussion. It is removal. Officer Brooks feels the change instantly. This is the moment where hesitation costs more than movement. He opens his mouth to speak, but the first motion comes from Valor. Not fast, not loud. Precise. The German Shepherd rises from down in one smooth, controlled motion and steps laterally across the wet pavement, placing his body directly in front of the wheelchair's path. He does not touch the wheels. He does not growl. He simply occupies the exact space needed to prevent backward motion. Then he sits. Square, centered, immovable. The crowd gasps, but the sound is different from earlier reactions. This is not fear. It is recognition of control. The leash remains loose in Brooks's hand, no tension. No yank. Valor's obedience is so complete that it almost appears choreographed. The guard behind the wheelchair stops mid-step, unsure whether to push forward or retreat. The supervisor raises a hand as if to speak, then lowers it again, calculating optics. Rainwater runs along the dog's back and drips onto the stone, but Valor does not blink. His gaze remains fixed on the guard's hands, tracking the smallest shifts in grip and pressure. Brooks knows exactly what the dog is doing. This is barrier positioning, a trained, non-violent skill used to hold space without escalation. It transforms motion into pause. The wheelchair remains exactly where it was. The girl's fingers tighten again around the armrest, her breathing quick but steadier than before. Around them, the livestream screens flicker with new lines of text. One comment repeats, then another, then several at once. She's the rescue kid. Last year's highway survivor. She saved 2 others. The words multiply faster than voices can read them aloud. Brooks catches fragments over a stranger's shoulder. Rescue. Survivor. City Award. The second clue forms not from paper this time, but from collective memory. The crowd begins to murmur again, this time with recognition rather than speculation. The supervisor attempts composure, stepping slightly to the side as if to regain control of the visual frame. "Let's keep this orderly," he says, voice firm but thinner than before. The guard behind the wheelchair releases his grip by inches, uncertain whether to proceed. The second guard adjusts his stance but does not advance. Authority has encountered resistance that is neither loud nor illegal. It is simply present. Valor remains seated, chest forward, tail still, breathing even. The dog's discipline absorbs the pressure that would otherwise spill into confrontation. Brooks does not need to issue another command. The line has already been drawn in silence. The girl's eyes drift down to the German Shepherd again, and for the first time since the paper fell, her shoulders lower slightly. The barrier in front of her is not a wall. It is protection shaped like patience. In the distance, the rising wail of sirens cuts through the steady rain. Not close enough to identify, but near enough to change calculations. Heads turn instinctively toward the sound. The supervisor's jaw tightens. The guards glance at each other. The crowd shifts position to keep both the scene and the approaching noise within their frames. The pressure cooker has reached its peak. Movement has stopped, but tension has not. It hums beneath the rain, beneath the phones, beneath the silent barrier of fur and discipline. The sirens draw closer, and with them, the certainty that whatever happens next will no longer remain contained within this small circle on the courthouse steps. The sound of the sirens grows louder, no longer distant background noise, but a clear approach that begins to pull every eye toward the street. For a brief second, the crowd's attention splits between the scene at the ramp and the flashing reflections forming on the wet pavement beyond the plaza. That split is enough to fracture composure. The nearest guard turns back toward Brooks, with irritation sharpened by uncertainty. Authority does not like losing visual control. "Step back," the guard snaps, voice raised now, the first true crack in his professional tone. The words are not a request. They are a command issued without jurisdiction. Brooks does not move. His posture remains relaxed, shoulders square, leash still loose in his hand. He does not mirror the volume. Silence, in this moment, carries more weight than shouting ever could. The guard closes the final inch of distance and places a hand on Brooks's shoulder. Not violent, not forceful, but unmistakably crossing from verbal boundary into physical contact. The crowd inhales collectively, phones lifting higher. The rain continues to fall, each drop magnifying the tension rather than softening it. Brooks turns his head slowly, eyes meeting the guards without hostility, only clarity. "Remove your hand," he says quietly. The guard hesitates, fingers tightening reflexively instead of releasing. The supervisor steps forward as if to intervene, then stops, calculating the optics again. The moment stretches thin, fragile, ready to snap. Brooks lifts his chin slightly and speaks with deliberate precision, voice clear enough to cut through the rain without rising above it. "Officer Daniel Brooks. Badge 301. The words land differently than a protest would. A badge number is not emotion. It is record. It signals accountability rather than confrontation. Several phones zoom closer. Screens capture the syllables as if they are evidence themselves. The guard's hand drops immediately, not out of courtesy but out of realization. The line has been crossed and documented at the same time. Valor responds not to anger but to the shift in Brooks's tone. Guard. The command is firm, singular, controlled. The German Shepherd rises smoothly from his seated barrier and stands at Brooks's left side, body angled slightly forward. No bark, no lunge. Just presence sharpened into readiness. His ears lift, eyes focused, stance balanced. The leash remains slack. Control remains absolute. The dog's activation is not aggression, it is alignment. The crowd's energy transforms again, this time into collective attention. The earlier mockery has vanished. What remains is anticipation. The supervisor opens his mouth to speak, then closes it, gaze flicking toward the street as the sirens swell into full volume. Red and blue reflections ripple across the rain-slick stone like moving shadows. From the edge of the plaza, dark city vehicles turn sharply into view, tires sending thin sprays of water outward, doors open before the engines fully stop. The arrival is abrupt, unscripted, impossible to ignore. Heads pivot in unison. Conversations cut off mid-word. The guards step back by instinct rather than instruction. Valor holds his stance beside Brooks, steady as a line drawn in ink. The girl remains in her wheelchair, silent but no longer alone in the center of attention. The supervisor's composure thins visibly, his earlier certainty dissolving under the flashing lights and approaching footsteps. The line has been crossed, recorded, and answered all at once. The vehicle's doors swing wider. Figures step out into the rain. And for the first time since the confrontation began, the balance of authority shifts before anyone says a single word. The city vehicles do not arrive with sirens blaring anymore. They arrive with engines cutting off in synchronized silence, a shift from noise to authority that draws the entire plaza into stillness. Doors open. Umbrellas unfold, shoes meet wet stone with measured steps instead of hurried ones. The supervisor straightens instinctively, posture changing from command to compliance in a single breath. The guards move half a pace back without being told. The balance of power does not swing violently. It settles. 3 officials approach the ramp, jackets marked with city insignia, expressions composed but focused. Their attention goes first to the girl in the wheelchair, then to the folded paper on the ground, then to the blocked ramp, and finally to the cluster of phones hovering like silent witnesses. No one raises a voice. No one needs to. The scene explains itself before introductions begin. Officer Brooks does not step forward. He does not step back. He holds position beside Valor, leash still slack, posture neutral. The German Shepherd remains standing, body angled protectively between the wheelchair and the path that had been used to push her away. Rain continues to bead along his fur, sliding off in thin streams. He does not shake it off. He does not fidget. His stillness becomes the visual anchor of the entire confrontation. One of the officials kneels slightly to lift the fallen paper from the wet stone, careful not to smear the ink. The seal gleams under the gray light. The lettering remains legible despite the rain. Youth recognition, keynote honoree. The official nods once, then turns the page outward for the supervisor to see. The supervisor's shoulders drop by a fraction. The guards exchange a glance that carries the weight of realization. "Why was she stopped?" the official asks, voice calm but firm. The supervisor begins to answer with the word policy, but the explanation falters halfway through. Behind him, dozens of screens replay the last several minutes in real time. Livestream footage shows the blocked ramp, the attempted redirection, the grip on the wheelchair handle. Evidence is no longer hidden. It is mirrored from every angle. Brooks's recorded badge numbers appear in reflections, timestamps glowing at the corner of the screen. Witnesses are everywhere, and they are all holding proof. Valor remains immovable until Brooks gives the next command: release. The word is quiet but clear. The German Shepherd shifts back by a single step, returning to a neutral stance at Brooks's side. The barrier dissolves instantly, replaced by disciplined calm. The officials register the precision, the absence of aggression, the deliberate control. It is not a spectacle. It is professionalism. Another official turns toward Brooks, recognition dawning. "Supervisor Brooks," he says, extending a hand not in greeting but in acknowledgement. The title moves through the crowd like a ripple. Regional K-9 Training Supervisor. The phrase reframes the entire scene. Brooks does not display it. He simply nods once, allowing the authority to exist without performance. Procedures begin unfolding with quiet efficiency. A call is placed to internal affairs, not as punishment, but as process. The event coordinator steps forward, rain dotting his suit, and offers a public apology that carries both formality and sincerity. The words are brief, but their weight is undeniable. The supervisor and guards are asked to step aside. Their removal is not dramatic. It is procedural. The crowd watches as accountability replaces argument. The girl's wheelchair rolls forward at last, unobstructed. The ramp that had been a barrier becomes a path again. She pauses beside Brooks, the folded paper now resting in her lap. For a second she hesitates, fingers tracing the gold seal as if confirming it is still real. Then she lifts it and holds it out to him. Her voice is barely above the rain. "Thank you." Brooks accepts the paper only long enough to steady it, then returns it to her hands. The gesture is small but deliberate. Recognition belongs to her, not to him. Valor lowers his head gently until his nose touches the edge of her fingers, a soft acknowledgement that carries more comfort than applause ever could. The girl's shoulders relax. The silence around her shifts from isolation to peace. The plaza remains quiet for one long breath. Then applause rises, not explosive, not forced, but steady and genuine. Phones lower. Umbrellas tilt back. The rain continues, but it no longer feels cold. The officials step aside, allowing the girl to proceed toward the stage that had nearly been denied to her. Brooks remains where he is, Valor seated once more at heel, both of them returning to the same calm posture with which they began. Consequences have been earned without spectacle. Respect has been revealed without demand. The confrontation ends not with victory, but with restoration. The ramp stands open. The crowd disperses slowly, and in the quiet space left behind, discipline and dignity have spoken louder than any raised voice ever could. The ceremony resumes not with fanfare, but with quiet order. The loudspeakers crackle softly as the announcer adjusts his tone, the earlier tension replaced by measured professionalism. The crowd that had gathered at the ramp disperses toward the seating area, umbrellas folding, phones lowering, voices returning to normal volume. The plaza feels different now, as if the air itself has exhaled. The girl's wheelchair rolls up the ramp without obstruction, wheels turning smoothly over the surface that had once been denied to her. No one blocks her path. No one questions her place. The folded invitation rests securely in her lap, edges still damp but intact. When she reaches the stage, she pauses, hands steady on the armrests, eyes scanning the audience, not for approval, but for courage. Her speech is brief. Just a few sentences spoken clearly, each word chosen carefully. She thanks the city. She thanks those who helped her last year. She does not mention the confrontation. She does not need to. The respect in the room speaks louder than any recounting of events. Officer Brooks remains near the base of the ramp, stepping slightly to the side so that attention never settles on him for long. His posture returns to the same calm neutrality he held at the beginning. Valor lies peacefully beside the wheelchair space, front paws extended, head resting between them, eyes half closed but still aware. The German Shepherd's presence is no longer a barrier. It is comfort made visible. Loose ends resolve quietly in the background. The supervisor is reassigned pending review, not in disgrace but in accountability. The event coordinator announces revisions to ramp access policy and public accommodation procedures, ensuring that what happened will not repeat. The adjustments are procedural, not dramatic, but they carry weight. Change, when done correctly, often sounds like paperwork instead of applause. After the ceremony concludes, the girl rolls back toward Brooks and Valor. There are no cameras close enough now to capture the moment clearly, and that is exactly why it matters. She leans forward slightly, wrapping her arms around Valor's neck in a gentle hug. The dog remains still, tail giving a slow, measured wag, head lowering just enough to meet her shoulder. Brooks watches with a faint nod, not intervening, not directing, simply allowing the connection to exist. The plaza begins to empty. Rain fades into a light mist. Conversations soften into background noise. Brooks clips the leash more securely but does not tug it. Valor rises smoothly, returning to heel without command, discipline flowing naturally into routine. The girl offers one last small wave before being guided toward her family. There is no victory pose. No headline moment. Only the steady rhythm of normalcy returning. Closure does not arrive as celebration. It arrives as dignity restored. True guardians stand firm without force, proving courage is calm loyalty when the world pushes hardest. Loyalty speaks louder than power.